spoke.
Recording. And just make sure everyone's microphone is off. Okay. So finding a nice comfortable position where you can be relaxed and yet alert. Allowing the eyes to close if that's comfortable, or you can leave them half open in a receptive gaze. And stretching up. And then settling in, allowing everything to hang off the spine. Checking in that you're not leaning forward or back. And allowing the attention to sink deeply into the body. And we'll have one sound of the bell just to help get settled. And allowing the body to be exactly as it is, not trying to change anything or make anything happen. And wherever you notice resistance, or holding, or bracing, allowing that to release, allowing the body to relax with each out-breath, but not forcing anything. Tonight's all about the practice of non-doing or being. Just allowing whatever sensations are there to be there, to move and change as they wish. Letting go of how you want things to be, letting go of any preferences. Just noticing and allowing. And as you notice sensations in the body, also notice the one who's noticing. That sense of being the witness to whatever's going on in your experience. You're not your body. You're not any thoughts that are there or emotions that are there. You're the one who's experiencing it all, who's aware of it all. And as you notice sensation in the body, becoming aware of when you're breathing in and when you're breathing out. And not trying to control the breath at all, but allowing the body to breathe as it wants. It doesn't matter if it's fast or slow. It doesn't matter if it's rhythmic or not. Just do your best to let go of any any exertion of will to control the breath. We're not trying to control our experience at all. We're just controlling our attention to the best of our ability. Focusing our attention on our body breathing and on noticing the awareness of this experience. And with each out breath, we can allow the body to relax. It naturally relaxes with each out breath. We're just riding the waves of the breath. We don't have to do anything. And we can just relax. And whenever we notice our attention has wandered from the body breathing, that's no problem. That's something to celebrate, that moment of awareness. And then gently bring the attention back to the body breathing. And continuing to be on the lookout for any resistance, any bracing, or anything unwanted. And just letting go of not wanting it. And instead embracing it, opening to it, letting it move through you without resistance. That may happen that the resistance drops, or it may not drop. It doesn't matter. We don't need to do anything or change anything. You can just relax and watch from a place of awareness and let the moment unfold as it will. And the mind may want to try and figure it out, solve a problem. So letting that go. We don't need to figure anything out or solve any problems. We can just rest in the not knowing. The not knowing may be uncomfortable, but we can open to that experience. There may be some fear there around not knowing. What's going to happen if I don't fix this problem? If I don't figure this out? Just allowing yourself to experience whatever's there. exploring that feeling of not knowing. Exploring whatever sensations are there. Good. And now expanding the field of awareness to include thoughts and emotions, just noticing your emotional state. Allowing yourself to fully experience whatever's there, whatever emotions are there. And not trying to stop any thoughts. And opening up to the full range of experience. So the body breathing, thoughts, emotions, sounds, smells, taste. Again, letting go of any idea of figuring anything out or making anything happen. Just relaxing and being aware that you're the one who notices. And there may be thoughts, again, wanting answers, wanting to figure things out. You may be asking yourself, when's COVID going to be over? When can things get back to normal? When can my life get back to normal? When's there going to be a vaccine? What's going to happen this fall? And just resting in the not knowing. The mind may want to answer these questions, try and figure them out. Let that go. Just experience the not knowing. Let go of resistance. Let go of the pull of any thoughts. Just relax and watch from the seat of awareness. What will happen? Don't know. How can I make myself feel better? Don't know. Relax. Experience the not knowing, no matter how uncomfortable. Stop defending against that discomfort. Stop defending against anything. Let it in all the way. Just feel it. Just allow it. Just relax. And watch from the seat of awareness. And coming back to the in-breath and the out-breath. And with the sound of the bell, we'll end this meditation. So feel free to move, or whatever needs moving, massage whatever needs massaging. So did anyone have any sort of strong emotions come up there? No. So at least for those 15 minutes, you were okay with not knowing. Sometimes it's harder than others. Anyone want to share anything from that? Okay, so let's go right into the home practice then. So, of course, there was the meditation on open awareness, and then there was continuing to work with the small stuff and with whatever comes up in terms of relax, release, lean back. Anyone want to share any experiences that came up with your letting go practice? Anyone have any questions or obstacles or successes? Yeah, Deborah?
A failure, is that okay?
Failure is wonderful. Wonderful. That's practice. You know, Ken MacLeod says practice is just one failure after another, right? That's why it's practice.
So it was today, and I go to an exercise class that reopened 3 weeks ago, and it's been really great until today. But I felt unsafe today because we were too close. So they changed. It was just things changed up. I don't know. And so all of a sudden I found myself too close to somebody, and I got very uncomfortable. And of course, I reacted.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my mind was not on the present moment so much as it was, if they're not doing this, I'm not going to be able to do this anymore. And I don't want to not have to do it anymore. And it's like going forward, I mean, I don't have a lot of high expectations for the future because of COVID. So I don't know how long I'll be able to do this.
So when you noticed that you were in reaction, then what happened?
I just stayed in it. I fought for my cause.
You fought for, when the mind started saying, you know, you need to do this or you need to do that, or I need to figure this out, that's what you went right. You stayed with the outer problem. And, you know, at any point, did you just stay with it and work on that and then?
Well, I couldn't stay. I couldn't continue to be in the class.
Right.
At that moment. I didn't feel like I could. And so I expressed that, why were we put in this position today when it hasn't been like that in previous classes?
Right, right.
Went on telling me, well, it's the protocol. And
right. So then you left?
No, I didn't leave.
Okay. So
I just talked, and then something changed. Somebody they changed, somebody else changed something
Yeah,
so that I could feel
yeah,
safe.
yeah. And tell me something, were there any thoughts in there of, you know, of practice in terms of saying, oh, this is a reaction, or, oh, I might want to, you know,
I didn't know what to
let
do.
go?
I didn't know what was I, if I leaned back and relaxed, what was, should have I just left then?
Well, it doesn't really, the practice doesn't really say anything about what you should do with the outer problem. I'm just trying to understand, like, whether, was this a case of you were just caught in it and you didn't have any thoughts of practice or any thoughts that there was a reaction going on or anything like that? Um, so you just, it wasn't until some time later that you sort of looked back on it and went, oh,
Oh,
okay.
right away I looked back on it. Right after the incident, I said, I failed, I failed, I failed.
Right, right, okay. And then when you were saying, I failed, I failed, I failed, so
I,
that's another reaction, right? That's a new reaction. And at that point,
I felt badly all day.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, I mean, there was a lot of, it sounds like there was a lot of power to this, right? And this is what, sorry, this is just the nature of life and of practice, right? Is that much of the time we're not in awareness, right? Um, and and so, a reaction happens and we're just, the consciousness collapses and we're just in it, you know? I mean, other times there's a little bit of awareness, and there's enough awareness to say, oh, there's this reaction going on, but there's not enough, but I don't really know what to do. It's just sort of confusion that comes up. There's like a vague awareness that there's a reaction, but I'm just in confusion. And then sometimes there's a reaction, and um, there's a sense of, I should let go, I should relax, but then you say, but I don't feel like it, right? I don't
Right.
want to relax, I want to solve this problem,
Yeah, I want
right?
to solve the problem. So I don't know. Can you help me, like, in that moment to let go? What would have that meant? Okay, be right next to somebody breathing down my back without a mask.
No, no. Again, it says nothing about the other problem. So if you're, if you know, if you're in a situation and you feel like, my health is in danger, I need to take care of myself, I need to leave, or I need to speak up, or I need to do whatever, then you should go ahead and do that. I mean, this practice isn't in any way, shape, or form saying don't deal with the outer problem.
I spoke up. I
Yeah,
spoke up and I was aware I was speaking up.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But but one aspect is to ask, like, is this an emergency? So if you're sitting there and there's someone there and it's making you uncomfortable, you can, I mean, the first thing you can do, this is, again, I don't know exactly the situation you were in, but if it's not an emergency, then the first thing you want to do is just relax, shift into the seat of awareness if you're not there already, and just allow yourself to experience what's going on inside. So never mind what's going on outside, just what's going on inside. What emotion, you don't even have to identify the emotion, but just feel whatever's going on, right? And you can do that for, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, however long you feel comfortable, assuming that there's an outer problem that you want to deal with it, just to get yourself to a little more of a clear place, a little more of a calm place. Again, you're not trying to calm yourself, but you're trying to just experience it and let it move naturally. Let it move through you, right? And then at that point, you would put your hand up or whatever. You're a little more clear, and you're like, okay, this is what I should do, and then do that. I mean, that's in an ideal world, right? But this is, when you see that your health is in danger, that's a survival issue, right?
Well,
So it's a big thing, right? Pardon?
that's how I felt,
You felt,
that it was a survival issue.
well, that's what you thought. So what you felt, it sounds like, was fear or anxiety or worry or something like that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And so that can be quite powerful. And, you know, we're all just starting with this practice. So, I mean, it's really beneficial to look back on it and go, oh, isn't that interesting? You know, this is what happened. And here were the obstacles, right? The obstacles were, number one, that there was this outer problem that was very powerful. And not only powerful, but it was, you know, it's like the danger is imminent, right? The danger is right there, right? It's not tomorrow, it's not next week, it's now, right? So there's a pressing external problem, right? And, you know, what I've noticed in my own practice, as I've practiced more and more, you know, more and more quickly, it always comes up. Oh, I should practice letting go now, right? But even with me, sometimes when it's really powerful, I think I should practice letting go, but then the mind somehow slips into the outer problem. Or I think I should practice letting go, but I forget to relax. And I just, you know, start saying to myself, okay, go into the seat of awareness and just, you know, allow, but I'm still, I'm still tense, right? I'm still, because I forgot that step of relax, right? So, you know, these things happen. It's not about preventing reactions. It's just about learning to let go. So, you know, what you learned today was just how powerful the mind is, how powerful the reactions are, and that, you know, that this was too powerful for you today.
Yeah, as a
right?
result, I hope to speak to the manager who was supposed to call me today. She wasn't there today, to talk to her about different plans, like if this happens again.
Yeah. But so, and that's, I mean, and that's great. That's great. I mean, you know, but that's all the outer problem, right? Which I'm not trying to lessen the importance of it. I'm just saying, like, I don't really have anything to offer on the outer problem. It's that's, you know, this course is all about the inner problem, right?
Yeah, I don't know what that would have looked like to relax. So, I mean, to relax, okay. I bet anybody can identify if they're in the middle of a street going to get run over. I mean, you know, like the COVID is not as tangible as that, right?
Yeah.
But
Well, yeah. I mean, I agree. If it's an emergency, then you need to deal with it, you know, that second, right? I mean, there's you know, but I'm saying it sounds like the situation you were in is one where you didn't need to deal with it quickly, but you had time to take a few breaths.
okay,
Right? That's all I'm saying.
thanks.
So, you know, yeah, what it would have looked like different. The main thing is just being open to experiencing the worry, the fear, allowing yourself to relax and experience it for a few seconds, and then going from there. That's the only difference. You know, and it's not about it's not about, you know, not reacting. It's about not storing the reaction, right? Not resisting it. So, not easy to do in a situation like that. So, anyway, I'd want to thank you for sharing, because that's really, I don't know, I think that's really helpful for folks. Yeah. Yeah, Melanie? Yeah.
I can share that I've also felt anything, even small things, really difficult. I was telling Lori this in our one-on-one. And so just to sort of highlight that, I mean, I feel like that was, when we talk about dealing with the small things first and getting good at dealing with those, I'm still struggling dealing with the small things. And to me, that's a big thing. And I can even see it being conceived as a potential I don't know, emergency, or Lori was saying something you have to deal with quickly, because even if you're taking a few breaths, those are breaths in, and if somebody's breathing down your neck and you don't feel safe and it's a respiratory disease, then that's something that you need to deal with immediately. But the small, just to go back to the small versus the large, because I've had problems that I feel like should be small, but they're often linked to larger problems. So, you know, if you have any, if I'm have an interaction with someone and then I'm turning that interaction over in my mind over and over again, but it might be because I've had a whole series in the last 10 years of interactions with that person. And so it's not necessarily just a small thing. And so it's really taken time to get to bigger things. But so I wanted to share a small success, which was as I was husking corn. So this is like the level of small things. As I was husking corn tonight, I'm thinking, well, I'm going to see that friend. We'll be outdoors. If it rains, what am I going to do? Oh no, are we going to be able to do this? And I just have all these thoughts coming up about something that's in the future, and then I was able to take that breath, lean back into the seat of awareness. And I really enjoyed husking that corn. I was noticing more. Then I was like, oh, that's a thought. I'm noticing the corn. Okay, just breathe. But I felt like I was really being more successful, but it was on that small of a level.
That's the level to work at. I mean,
yeah,
you know,
so
because
like I certainly don't expect that in that situation. I could, in like a bigger situation, I am not, I mean, at some point I'll be in, I'll continue trying.
Yeah.
But that's sort of where I am having any level of success is at these things that I'm a lot less invested in.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, this is a very short course, and in the context of your life, you know, and this practice, it's unrealistic to expect to be able to move beyond. If you can just become comfortable with practicing with the small stuff in this 6 weeks, that is a huge success, right? Because it's just not, it's you know, it's very unlikely that you're gonna, you know, it takes a while to really see how to work with this and see how it plays out in your own experience and train the mind. It generally takes a month or two for the mind to be trained, and that's, you know, that's from the time that you know, are doing it, you know, in a way that you know what you're doing, right? That's like just, you know, so you know, like going, you know, if you're gonna like start jogging every day, you know, it's like a month of jogging every day. But if you have to spend a month figuring out how to jog, then it's going to take that plus a month, right? And we're just figuring out how to let go, right? We don't yet know how to let go, so we're not, you know, starting in the same place as someone who's going to jog and, you know, who already knows how to jog, right? So we you know, we really just want to get to the point where we know how to practice, right? And, you know, so I really strongly encourage everyone to like really really try and notice the really subtle reactions, the really subtle, the just small stuff that's not quite the way you want it, right? Or even just the mind. Sometimes, you know, I noticed this today, and especially thinking about this week with the, you know, not knowing is kind of our theme, certainly for the meditation. So, you know, whenever you start, you know, your mind starts thinking about something, I find it's very helpful to just say, oh, don't know. Don't know. You know, when is this going to happen? Don't know. You know, when is this person going to do what I want? Don't know. You know, oh, they were supposed to be here by now. When are they going to come? Don't know. I mean, you might want to text them, but anyway, but the point is to just get comfortable with not knowing. And any time in the day, because I notice for myself many times during the day, my mind will just start thinking about something, right? It's not, and I'm, you know, I'm in the midst of one task, and all of a sudden my mind starts thinking about something else. that's kind of interesting or sticky or compelling, right? That's a great moment to practice letting go, right? A great moment to practice letting go. Just see if you just, just relax, move into the seat of awareness, and just notice how the mind is just wants to go off somewhere else than where, than where my intention was to be, right? And just practice with that. Like, that's really good practice, right? And it's much easier to practice with that than with, the situations that, that folks are describing. I heard a talk of Mickey's last week. It was really good. He was talking about, developing this internal strength. And he said, a really good practice is if you're eating a meal and you're really enjoying it, and you get to the last bite and you're thinking, oh, I'm really going to enjoy this last bite, don't eat it. Leave it, and just practice letting go of that, letting go of eating that last bite, right? So, I mean, that's a wonderful, wonderful practice, right? You're eating a chocolate bar and you get down to the last piece and say, oh, I'm going to save this for later, even though you really want to have that last piece. And just notice what's going on in your body as you're doing that. Just practice, relax, seat of awareness, and just feel this experience of desire, of wanting to eat that last piece, right? Just notice what's going on. Just let it, and it's small. It's not a big thing, right? But that's the perfect thing to practice with. Teresa, yeah.
What is the point of that kind of exercise? Is it to show that your thoughts don't have control over you, kind of, or?
Yeah, because what we're really doing here, like a big aspect of this practice is releasing the pull of the thoughts, right? That you have an urge. So the urge is to go with the thoughts. The urge is, there's this outer problem and I need to deal with it, right? The mind wants me to think about this thing, but you don't think of it as in the mind wants me to think about this thing. You think of it in terms of, you identify with it and you say, I want to think about this thing, right? And this is really important and I need to. And then it's like that practice of, no, that's not where I want, that's where my patterns want me to go. But, my higher self, I don't want to go there, right? So it's that, what's the word I'm looking for? That control over your urges, right? It's just learning to have an urge, to feel the pull of your thoughts and your emotions in one direction, and to say, no, not going there. I'm going to just relax and watch this urge and watch whatever emotions are here, and I'm just gonna exert my higher will to do the practice.
Can you adapt that to other, say, goals that your higher self has? Say your higher self knows you should exercise regularly.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, totally. Because, what I hear from people a lot, and myself too, is, like I gotta, you decide I'm going to jog and I'm going to jog 5 days a week, or I'm going to jog every day, or whatever it is. And then, and I'm going to do it at, soon when I get, whatever, before dinner, I'm going to jog. And then 5 o'clock rolls around or whatever. And you're like, I just don't feel like it.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't feel like it. Right. And then we think, okay, well, I don't feel like it, so I'm not going to go. Well, that I don't feel like it, that is a reaction. Right? That is a pattern. Right? And so it's like, oh, I don't feel like it. And then it's like, okay, relax, Move into the seat of awareness. Just feel what it feels like right now. You know, just what is this experience of not feeling like going jogging? And just get into that place of clarity and then say, you know what, I'm going jogging. Right? And it's like Mickey says, if you want to see why you do something, stop doing it. Right? So if you want to see why you feel like, you know, what that I don't feel like it is about, then, you know, don't listen to it and just notice what's going on, right? You know, that's, I mean, I'm sure everybody's experienced this, you know, where you set an intention, you know, this is why people don't, you know, follow through on their New Year's resolutions, right? People, you set an intention and then, yeah, but I don't feel like it. It's like, that's your personal mind. That's your personal mind saying, I don't feel like it. That is not your higher intention.
Forget about exercising. What about meditating? So you like.
The same with meditating, you know, same with that. I mean, you know, you set an intention when you're feeling good and you say, this is good for me and I'm going to do this. And then the time comes and you say, you know what, I don't feel like it, you know? Now, sometimes maybe maybe you're exhausted, so you need to rest. Okay, then rest, right?
Or is that a rationalization?
But sometimes you're exhausted, and what do? You eat a tub of ice cream. Well, that's not helping you with your exhaustion. That's a lot of work for your stomach to digest that thing, right? This is what I noticed when I was at Plum Village for, you know, months and months at a time, is when you don't have a TV, when you don't have a computer, when you don't have all these distractions, when you rest, you just lay down on your bed and you rest. And it's like, whoa, this is great. You know?
What was the village you were at?
Plum Village, it's where Thich Nhat Hanh used to live. It's a,
Oh,
it's a practice center monastery in France.
wow.
Yeah.
He used to live?
Yeah, well, he's in Vietnam now. He left Plum Village. He had a stroke and he can't walk or talk. And after a while, he decided he wanted to be in a warmer climate, and he went to Thailand where they have a monastery. And then about a year and a half ago, he went back to Vietnam to his home temple that he hadn't been to for, you know, 70 years or whatever. And, or maybe not 70, 60. Anyway, so he went. So he's back at his root temple, as he calls it. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, great question, Teresa. Yeah. So yeah, if you look, you'll see that you're having these little reactions, or these little, like, the personal mind trying to pull you away from, you know, what's going to be good for you, what you've already decided you want to do. You'll see your personal mind is a big obstacle in your life, and there's so many opportunities to practice these little teeny things that you can you know, practice no problem as soon as you recognize, oh, this is a reaction, and I can just relax. You know, open to it, you know, not get pulled into it.
Lori, can I just say, I think I'm in the dark here, so you can't see me, but I just wanted to say from our talk, it was very helpful what you encouraged me to do, or I mean, I don't know how much detail to go into it about the process, but it generally just more accepting of what's happening, being more forgiving. We were talking about, for example, if I get angry, you know, in traffic or something. So, you know, managing to stop it, that's a success. I still thought it was a failure, quote unquote, even to begin that mental talk. And I think, you know, you talking to me, allowing me to be a bit more accepting of what's happening. Anyway, I'm just sharing this in case it's helpful to others. But
Yeah.
I found that compassion has made a huge difference, like in the last couple of days. So
Yeah, and thanks for the reminder, Mariana. Yeah, I mean, anytime you notice that you're your personal mind, is being nasty to you, then that's a great time to practice letting go. And it's a great time to just, bring compassion to yourself, to just say, it can just be a little thing like, just some gesture of caring towards yourself, like just, touching your heart, or just saying, oh, yeah, I don't need to be so hard on myself. I want to be kind to myself, just, whatever gesture of compassion and kindness you can bring to yourself whenever you notice that you're being hard on yourself or putting yourself down.
Yeah, because for me, I found it's another impediment to the process. Once you actually let go of that, it allowed things to flow more easily. You'd think, if you're trying to do it by will, I found for me just the opposite was more helpful.
Yeah. Great. And I state this over and over again, but like we're not trying to avoid reactions. We're trying to, when we notice reactions, let them in, because the reactions happen because the samskaras are there, right? Or because the situation is just, that's the nature of the situation, is it's scary or whatever. And like the snake, and so the idea is not to stop those things from happening. It's to, when they happen, allow that, just, not resist them and let them pass through you and experience them, yeah, Teresa?
I think I know the answer to this already, but when using the exercise example, again, if you don't feel like exercising, but you don't give in to the mind kind of thing, it makes it easier to do it, right? Like when you're, when you don't feel like it, like you really don't feel like it, and the thought of it just kind of like, that would be horrible. But if you do that process and sit back in the state of awareness and all of that, it makes it easier to do it, right?
Yeah,
like,
I think it does, because you can, that resistance that you're experiencing, when you let it just play itself out, then it tends to dissipate.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't mean that you're gonna, oh, I'm gonna practice relax, release, lean back, and then I'm gonna want to jog. It doesn't necessarily mean, I wouldn't go that far, right? But,
that resistance won't be.
You'll have less resistance. You'll be in a more clear place, and then hopefully you can just remember that this was an intention, that this is what's, that this is being good to yourself, and that even if I don't feel like it, it's because we identify with that feeling, and we feel we need to honor it, right? So, like we talk about validating our feelings. It's good to validate your feeling by recognizing this is my feeling, and then feeling it, and not resisting it, and not trying to, not beating yourself up for having it. But then don't let it rule you. You don't validate it by doing whatever it says, right? That's, you experience it, but you don't let it control you. So, when you step back into the seat of awareness and you see, oh, this is just an emotion, this is just a thought, like this is just my personal mind, this is garbage, right? And then you have more clarity to say, wait a minute, it's important that I go jogging, and maybe I don't feel like it, but I know that, 5 minutes into it, I'm gonna, I know that when I get back from jogging, I'm gonna be happy I went, and I'm gonna feel better.
Yeah.
And,
Okay.
So, yeah. So we should probably, we didn't talk about noticing when your model of reality is challenged. We didn't talk about see why you do it, not doing something, and just noticing the urge and being with the urge. So I guess, does anyone have a burning desire to talk about any of that and stuff that came up with that? Nick, yeah?
Just quickly, I think what I'm hearing and what I've been wrestling with is So often when I let the full weight of my feelings emerge, with the idea of letting them blow through me, what I get caught up in is all the judgment that comes with feeling those powerful feelings, judgment about myself or others or a situation. And I think what I'm learning here is jettison the judgment, but allow the feelings. And not even try to jettison the judgment, just be aware if that's arising. So I would be more inclined if I was feeling guilty about not exercising or something, I would be more inclined to say, who is it that's telling me to go exercise? Is that my dad or my mom harassing me because I'm fat shamed or something? You know, maybe this is empowering for me to say no. But the answer doesn't matter, as you know. What for me is to separate the judgment from the feeling.
Yeah. It's
That's all I
important.
wanted to share.
Yeah, well, it's important to parse the experience because, you know, once you disentangle your experience into this is a thought, this is a feeling, then it loses some power, loses a lot of power, right? And right away you disidentify with it, right? And so, yeah, and it's not a matter of jettisoning the thoughts. It's just a matter of not giving them any weight, of recognizing this is my personal mind and it's just garbage. It's not taking me in a good direction. And so, you know, I'm not going to give it any weight just because it's my mind saying it, right? I'm going to evaluate it, you know, from a clear place. So yeah, thanks, Nick. So why don't we get into chapter 14, seeing as it's 5 to 8. Letting go of false solidity. So this is, you know, so chapter 13, you know, introduced the idea of our mental model and how we create the mental model. And then this chapter, letting go of false solidity, gets into the, like, really, you know, foundational, you know, how we start the creation of the mental model, which is that we kind of, you know, if you think of undifferentiated experience, and then what happens is we find something interesting and we grab onto it. Maybe it's interesting because it's causing, you know, unpleasantness. It's very unpleasant, or maybe it's interesting because it's very pleasant. But, you know, we tend to narrow our focus and focus on it. It catches our attention, and then it becomes something more solid, and then we kind of hold on to it, and we kind of reify it, and then we, you know, so we, you know, I like this, I don't like that, you know, I identify with this, like, you know, I'm like your profession, or, you know, I like bicycles, I like the color blue, I don't like when people do this, you know, all, and we kind of, we want to feel that there's something reliable out there. We get very disoriented with, you know, just like things just kind of floating around. And so we build our psyche out of this, out of our likes and dislikes, our preferences, our views, our beliefs, our judgments. And it all comes from this tendency to cling, right? This tendency to want to be able to have something solid to hold on to. And just this tendency to want to, you know, grab shiny objects, basically. So, and he talks about how the tendency to cling is very, very strong, primal, right? Because there's this real fear around, you know, it's kind of the idea that you're falling, and you want to get some sort of orientation, right? You want to get right side up. You don't want to just let yourself, you know, you know. So, you know, it's a very strong tendency to cling. And so, but, you know, but this model that we built, it's, you know, it's not reality, and it's constantly bumping up against reality. Whenever any of these views or beliefs or wants comes into contact with a reality that is different, right? We have this idea of this other person, and then they do, we think they're really nasty, and then they do something nice. We think they're really nice, and then they do something nasty. We expect it this after, we looked at the weather forecast and it said it was going to be nice, and then it was raining. All of these things are our mental model of reality, and then challenges to our mental model of reality. And they're challenges because our model doesn't match reality, right? And so, I mean, like today, Deborah, you went to this classroom, you had this idea of how it should be, and it wasn't like that. And so, there's you had a real and valid concern, but you also had, the reaction was made stronger because whatever preconceived idea you had of what it was going to be like, right? So this mental model is constantly being challenged. And so Mickey talks about this idea of like really noticing when we're clinging, noticing this tendency to cling. That's a pretty advanced thing. So, for now, I wouldn't worry about it. But what he says is in here that I think is really important is he says, stop seeing the disturbed mind as a negative experience, right? So in other words, this is just what I was saying before about the idea is not to not have a reaction. It's that when you see the disturbed mind, think of it as, oh, this is an opportunity to learn to let go. This is an opportunity to release my samskara, or this is an opportunity to not store whatever this new experience is, right? So, and he says, when you're disturbed, the first thing you should do is ask who notices, right? Which is move into your seat of awareness, right? So, again, whenever you first notice a disturbance, it takes virtually no time to ask who notices. It takes virtually no time to relax, right? So if you can just get yourself to do those two things, or even one of those two things, you're way ahead of the game, way ahead of the game. But again, this chapter is really, it's pretty advanced in terms of, breaking down experience. And, whenever I read this chapter, I just think to myself, someday I hope to, to see the mind, the psyche being built. He talks about, one day we can watch the psyche being built. And I think to myself, yeah, one day. But that's a very subtle level of things, very subtle level, right? So you don't need to worry about that too much. But the big thing I would take from that is just this idea of not seeing the disturbed mind as a negative experience, but rather seeing it as an opportunity to learn to let go, as a prompt for who notices, right? So instead of asking yourself, what should I do about this? Ask who notices. And then ask, what should I do about this, right? Again, though, if a car's about to run over you, don't relax. That's the one time where the fight, flight, freeze system is operating effectively. That's what it was designed for, right? Okay. So we're going to do a breakout group. And the question for the breakout group is, do you want to be happy regardless of what happens? Do you want to be happy regardless of what happens? And what might happen to change your mind? Like what might come up where you're gonna, in other words, you say, oh, I want to be happy regardless of what happens. Okay. And then, so what might challenge that? So, well, if my spouse left me, if my mother died, if I lost all my money, if I was wrongly accused of murder and thrown in jail for life, would you still want to be happy? So what, so do you want to be happy regardless of what happens? And then what might happen that would challenge that? And it might be something very small. Are folks clear about that? Yeah. Any questions? Okay.
Say again what you want. Say again what you want. Just go.
You want to be happy regardless of what happens.
Yeah.
And then what events, what happenings might challenge that resolve to be happy regardless of what happens? That makes sense? Or if you want to talk about a related topic, do you think happiness is a choice? And why?
But I like the first questions, but I didn't understand how to answer the second part.
Oh, do you want to be happy regardless of what happens? And then what are some examples of things that might happen that would be challenging to be happy in? Like make a list of regardless of this, regardless of that, regardless of that. I want to be happy regardless of whether A, B, C, D, E. Just try and think of some things that might be challenging to to be happy regardless of that.
And if we have them ahead of time, if we know, then it's sort of going to already have us set up for more success.
I'm not really thinking of it in that term, no. I think you're going to be, the point is just to have the clear intention, to try and think of situations where you might have trouble being happy, but the question is, do you want to be happy? Do you want to be happy in this situation? Do you want to be happy in that situation? Do you want to be happy in that situation? Happy or, yeah, or it's like keep an open heart. You don't want to be necessarily inappropriately happy. It's like, do you want to be happy at a funeral? Well, I want my heart to be open. Anyway, hopefully you'll enjoy the discussion, whatever you come up with. Okay, here we go. We'll just have 5 minutes.
Leslie,
There's three of us.
there's
I'm-
three of us?
Yeah, I'm just watching.
Oh.
Oh,
Never
I'm
mind.
crooked. Leslie, we meet again, only I'm crooked.
That's okay.
Do you guys care?
No.
It's too much work because my phone is sort of like taped to my desk so it's in place. So I'll just stand like this. This makes me happy. The question, okay, so we left off, Leslie, on Woody Allen. What comes up for you when you hear the question, do you want to be happy?
Well, I mean, immediate answer, yes. What are some things that would be an obstacle to that?
Sure.
I guess like health would be one.
Mm-hmm.
Like like death, someone close to you.
Yeah. Would you still want to be happy? If you were told you had cancer, would you still want to be happy?
Yes. I think like my answer would always be yes. But
The bigger question for me is like, how do we maintain that feeling in those situations? I mean, if you ask anybody if they want to be happy, they're obviously going to answer yes. That's like, at least in my opinion. I mean,
Yeah.
but how much do our brains actually choose to make us the opposite?
I think the natural response is to try to not be happy.
Say more. What do you mean?
Like our tendency is to focus on the negative. So the natural state of our minds does not help us to be happy. We kind of have to like fight against the tendency to think negatively.
So how does this untethered soul thing factor into that for you?
Well, I mean the whole exercise of like learning to let go, that's not like I don't think that's something that we naturally know how to do.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think we're kind of like trying to like fight against like the autopilot,
Okay.
but it's like a positive fight, I would say.
What do you mean? It's a positive.
Like a positive fight against ourselves.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I would agree. I would agree. I think my natural tendency is towards the negative. But if you ask me, do I want to be happy? I would answer, of course, yes. So I think you raise a good point in the sense of fighting against our natural impulses.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because like our natural response to that question is yes, but then the way our minds work naturally is not like helping us to achieve that.
Right, which then begs the question, how much enjoyment do we actually get out of being miserable?
I don't know. I feel like that's a, a thing that people use to relate as well.
What do you mean?
Like complaining about things or like, oh, I feel so stressed. It's like you kind of like bond over those like negative feelings sometimes.
And what do you like? So what I'm trying to figure is like, what do we get out of the, like we get a bonding thing, but what do we get out of it personally?
I guess it's like staying in our comfort zone.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree with you. That's how I feel. It's like it's really easy for me to go there and complain or whatever. It's really hard to like let go.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting. Yeah. I mean, it's the way it all sort of ties back together again. So I think we only have about 20 seconds left. Is there any way we can tie that back into Woody Allen?
He's the opposite of what we want to.
Well, yeah, there's an example of someone who really has
loves
exploited.
To complain.
Well, yeah, it has made actually a lot of money from it.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. So, do you want to be happy regardless of what happens? So, anyone who doesn't want to be happy regardless of what happens? I know in our group people wanted to be. Yeah, thanks, Nick. Yeah, so it begs the question, well, if we want to be happy regardless of what happens, what gets in the way, right? what gets in the way? Did anybody talk about that at all?
Well, what Christina and I chatted about, if I may, Christina, is we just ended up by saying we agreed that you shouldn't have external conditions to be happy. But if you're being held upside down and tortured, it's hard to be happy. So you shouldn't be dependent on external things to be happy, but external things can cause you difficulty. Then we talked about, well, if the Buddha was being held upside down, and he'd probably be noticing some positive sensation or the chink of light coming through the wall or something, would find some way of experiencing happiness. But I felt, and I think Christina, you agreed, that that was kind of beyond me, and that's why this work is helpful, because I think it reduces the amount of space for that experience.
Yeah.
I don't know. Hopefully I got some of that right, Christina.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's no doubt that, I mean, that's what challenges us, right, is external events generally. But so what we want to look at is what's the mechanism, right? Because basically what happens is we're naturally happy, but then we defend, we close our heart, right? And we do things like say to ourselves, oh, it's raining out, right? Wow, I wanted to go for a walk and now I can't go, so, right? So then we make ourselves unhappy because of this, because things are not as we want, right? Number one cause of unhappiness, things not being as we want, right? And because our mind tells us that things need to be a certain way to be happy, right? So therefore our mind tells us if they're not that way, then I can't be happy. And so the practice is to see that it's just your personal mind, it's garbage. Is this worth closing? No. No. Is this worth giving up my happiness? No. Right? So it's having that clarity of mind to see that it's just your personal, it's just your reaction, it's your personal mind telling you that because things aren't as you want, you can't be happy. Right? Or you shouldn't be happy. Right? They made me terribly angry. I have every right to be angry, right? You don't say it in terms of happiness, but you say, I have every right to be angry. I have every right to be scared. I have every right to be whatever it is, right? So the mind tricks us into being unhappy. The mind tricks us into closing, right? And when I say the mind, I mean the samskaric mind, if you will, right? It's our reactivity, a reactive mind that takes us out of happiness. So the important thing to remember is we're naturally happy, but then we get so, we've just gotten very much into the habit of closing whenever something doesn't go our way, whenever something is not as we want, right? And so the way out of that is, first of all, to have a strong resolve that says happiness is a choice, because I can train myself not to close. And so how do I train myself not to close? I train myself not to close by recognizing, number one, that there's nothing worth closing over, that there's no situation in which I don't, in which I want to be unhappy. And so then we just watch when we close, which is basically when there's a reaction, right? When the personal mind starts telling us, I don't like this. And then when we notice that going on, when we notice that our experience has gone negative, then we say, wait a minute. Is this worth closing? No. Is this worth giving up my happiness for? No. Right? The other day, I got a bill from a contractor. Like, they redid my roof. It was $10,000, and he charged me $56 extra for parking. even though he never told me that he needed to park, that he needed a parking spot. And on the third day when he came, he didn't even tell me he was coming. He like left and didn't tell me when he was coming back. And when I called to say, do I need to arrange parking for tomorrow? Are you coming tomorrow? I was told, don't worry about it. And then I get a bill for parking. And I'm in reaction, of course, over this 56 bucks and the injustice of it all. And I start thinking to myself, is this worth closing? No. No, this is not worth closing. And I thought, you know, so I really, you know, and it was still, it wanted, you know, it was, I was just opening to it. It was, you know, it had some strength to it. It wasn't just, it didn't just go poof. It had some strength to it. And I just kept saying, reminding myself, is this worth closing? No. Is this worth losing my happiness? No. I'm just going to experience this. I'm going to sit, I'm going to relax, you know, and at the end of the day, I'm going to ask him to take that off my bill, but I don't want to give away my happiness in the process, right? So like I had the reaction, and then, you know, after a few minutes, I noticed, oh, this is really, I've really gone negative here. And so I asked, is this worth closing, right? And so then I could just, you know, really experience the anger, right? The frustration. Teresa, yeah?
What's the definition of closing?
Well, part of it is, it's like a shutting down, right? So it can be, I notice it as a tightness in my chest. It may be different for you, but it's basically when you're unhappy,
Right.
when you're defending your mental model, you're defending your views, you're defending, you know, like it's like things shouldn't be like this, or you're resisting. You're like, no, I don't want to. I don't, you know, you know, any time your experience goes negative, really. But I do notice that it's often there's a tightness in my heart, right? So, you know, it's just this change in attitude from one of kindness and openness to one of and happiness to one of you know, very self-centered, you know, defending and unhappiness. But look to your chest, because that's often a really great clue. You know, because and that's why Mickey talks about it as the heart closing. It's because generally there is this sensation of contraction around the heart area. It's not the physical heart, it's the heart area. It's the energetic heart, if you will. Yeah. So, yeah, the bottom line is your mind tricks you into closing. So it's about noticing that, just noticing the reactivity, noticing the personal mind, noticing when it's gone negative, and then, you know, asking yourself the question, is this worth closing? Or is this worth losing my happiness? Right? And just recognizing that happiness is a choice. Now, it's a choice under it's when there is awareness, it's a choice. Of course, awareness isn't always there, right? You know, when a powerful reaction comes up, awareness goes out the window. But, and also for most people, they don't, I mean, they've never, I mean, the whole idea that happiness, that there should be happiness independent of conditions makes no sense, right? Most people in society just believe that happiness comes from external, you know, I need my list of things to be as I want in order to be happy, right? That's how I go about being happy, is getting what I want. So, Kim, yeah.
Yeah, I actually really liked this exercise, and this notion of like, oh, is it worth closing my heart over whatever it is? And it's so interesting to think that, oh, I have a choice. Because today, something so small, like so small. I made espresso at home. And then as I was drinking it, the next sip I took was like, oh, it's cold. And I was like, oh, what? Like, this espresso is ruined. And I was like, like in that moment, I didn't know I had a choice of opening.
Right.
But like right away, I was just like, oh, this is ruined. It's cold espresso. Like, how am I supposed to drink this? I was like, oh, whoa, it's so small. It's the temperature of an espresso. Like, So, and it didn't even take so much effort. It was nothing really like big or dramatic. And I decided to close my heart over this espresso. So it's really interesting to really think about, oh, in every moment I have a choice. Even in that moment, I had a choice of whether to close or open my heart.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Yeah, it's our personal preferences, right? Our personal preferences are actually destroyers of our happiness. Because the easiest formula for happiness is, I'm happy no matter what. I love everything. I love the rain. I love the cold espressos. I love getting sick. Okay, so we're going to have another breakout. And the question here is, what's the worst thing that's ever happened to you that you're willing to share? What's the worst thing that's ever happened to you? And would you like to be able to keep your heart open through something like that? And how, yeah, maybe you can stop there. Deborah, you're muted, I think.
Isn't that a huge thing? The worst thing that, like for me, the worst thing that's ever happened. Did you say the worst thing that's ever happened?
The worst thing that's ever happened to you that you're willing to share.
Okay, but if I think it's the worst thing, isn't that a huge thing?
Yeah, that's the point.
I mean, it's not about a cappuccino.
No, I'm not suggesting that this is the thing you should practice on. What we're trying to do here is I
don't think I could keep my heart open again.
Well, that's, yeah. So the point of this exercise is to make a commitment to keep your heart open, even if that happened, right? So this is the North Star, right? This is the saying to yourself, and how would the situation have changed if you could have kept your heart open? Maybe add that question. How would the situation change if you could keep your heart open? So the idea here is just like, so everybody said you want to keep your heart open regardless of what happens, right? So now the question is, what's the worst thing that's ever happened? And could you imagine keeping your heart open in that situation? Right? And it doesn't, when I say, could you imagine, I mean, imagine. I'm not saying to make a judgment as to whether you could or couldn't, because I doubt any of us could keep our hearts open through the worst thing that's ever happened to us. But wouldn't it be wonderful if you could? That's basically what this exercise is about. What's the worst thing that's ever happened? And wouldn't it be wonderful if you could, and so, would you want your heart to be open in that situation is kind of the question. And how would that change the situation? Does that make sense, Deborah? Yeah. So this is about motivation, not about, a challenge for.
The older we are, the more things that have happened, right? So.
Sure.
Not necessarily worse. I mean, somebody very young could go. Anyway, it's
Yeah. Okay. Here we go. 5 minutes.
5.
5.
Oh, there's 3. Lori.
There's 3 of us. Yeah, yeah. So, do you want to talk first, or would you like me to?
You can go first.
Okay, so probably the worst thing that's happened to me is a vessel bursting in my brainstem, leaving me with partial paralysis and double vision for a full year, twice in my life. So it's interesting, Lori, because I was thinking very specifically about this situation as you talked about the heart opening. And I think it's, it's something that I continue to work on because I still have the medical condition that caused this. And I think that this part of my practice is helping me to not be totally controlled by the what ifs of life. Because the reality is I could be like scared to death and depressed that, oh my God, it's going to happen again. It's going to happen again. It's going to happen again. I'm so scared. And then it might not happen. I could get hit by a car. So, yeah, that's my practice, is very specifically opening my heart to that. And I think the gift it gives is one thing I learned at a very young age, was that you never know what's going on with someone else by looking at them. And that is a really lovely reminder to be compassionate and not to make assumptions that we know what's going on with someone else or ourselves, for that matter. Yeah. Yep. So yeah, anyways, and yeah, it's yeah, that's all I'll say.
I can go next. So the worst thing that's ever happened to me was my father passing away. And that was, yeah, it was really challenging because it was a surprise. Like, it happened out of nowhere. But I would like to be able to keep my heart open, during that time. And sometimes when thoughts of him come up, I do practice relaxing and allowing my heart to open.
That's kind of like practicing for the ultimate let go. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
It's so beautiful too, because, I think it might have been Thich Nhat Hanh that talks about how our ancestors live within us and that how they never really die. And so it's very beautiful that you have those connections with him. Yeah.
I guess I could share if you want.
Sure.
You guys are done. I don't want to take up your time really, but
Okay.
Probably 2 things. One that happened when I was a kid and one that happened when I was an adult. So I'll say the adult one because I'd be more able to practice as an adult than as a kid. I guess it was one New Year's Eve when I was about 25, I think, 24, when I was in the closet and I was, I had this close-knit group of friends, none of whom knew that I was gay. And we were at a club on New Year's Eve, and you know, of course, I was trying to pretend I was straight. Not that I ever met anybody, but just pretend to look or whatever. And I found myself alone. You know, they had sort of gone off to go after this one or that one. And I found myself alone at maybe half an hour to midnight in this club, and I just thought, what the heck am I doing here? And I wound up leaving, crying all the way home in the cab, and saying, that's it, I'm done with going out to, you know, to dance clubs and pretending to be interested in women. So yeah, that was pretty awful. And you know, would I like to be able to keep my heart open? Yeah. I mean, and I think my heart open, in a way, I think my heart was open, because it was just because I was alone in the cabin, I was just crying. I mean, my heart, you know, but I suppose to be able to really, you know, I don't remember like how open I was or how, you know, but I would want to be, to just really experience that. And I think experiencing that more fully would have led me to come out maybe a little sooner. I came out not that long after that, so but it was quite a series of events anyway. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm not sure what keeping my, I better, by the way, press the button to close the room. I'm getting caught up in my own thing. You know, if I would have asked myself at that time, is it worth keeping your heart? Is this worth closing? I might have said yes.
Right.
You know. Yeah, I might have said yes, but you know, because I was in a pretty bad state. You know, but these days, like, you know, like if I was told I had, you know, a year to live or whatever, could I keep my heart open? I think the real challenging thing is when people are mean to me. That's the toughest. You know, they keep the heart open. Okay, hey everyone. So I hope you enjoyed reliving the worst thing that's ever happened to you in your life. Hopefully it wasn't, hopefully you could open to whatever came up there. And I'm laughing, but I mean, did anyone have a tough time with that, or anyone want to share anything around that?
I'll go.
Yeah, Nick.
Daddy tonight. It seems to me that, and we were talking about this a little bit. It seems to me that a lot of what we're talking about is how we deal with, or not, what other people do to us, or other things happen to us. I have no problem with the practice and understanding how it can benefit us, or me, in that way. What I have more difficulty with is when I feel like I've done something bad or terrible, and it's some, you know, in case 20 years ago I had an affair on my wife and it ruined my marriage and it affected my kids and all kinds of things. I can talk about it now because it was 20 years ago and I understand the reasons for it. But the other side of the coin is when, so on this side of the coin, I didn't feel for a long time I had the right to be happy given how much misery my actions had caused others. So it's less what people do to me and what I need to own. And it's somewhat conditional. You know, I can't feel happy if I knew I ran over a bunch of kids yesterday because I wasn't, you know, being safe.
Yeah. So thinking
that's
about
my question here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in turn, you know, yeah. I mean, some of the most challenging times to keep your heart open is when you're beating yourself up over something, right?
Right.
I mean, I've certainly experienced that. And it's very challenging. Yeah, there's absolutely, as you say, it's very possible that it's something that you did. You know, and feelings of shame or regret or whatever it might be. You know, I remember, you know, Thich Nhat Hanh told the story of a soldier who, you know, poisoned all these children in Vietnam, and he just could not get past that, and was so in regret, you know, and Thai finally, you know, when he spoke with Thai said, you know, you should help other children, you know, you should, you know, do something to help children. And, you know, and you don't, you know, and, you know, in order to help you to let go of this terrible regret, and shame. But of course that's an external, I mean, I think that's very wise, but I mean, that's an external thing. You know, I guess the question I would ask you is, you know, if you said you wanted to be happy regardless of what happens, would, you know, if you know, if you accidentally killed a group of children tomorrow, would you want to be happy regardless of that?
Sorry. I'm struggling with why we get a free pass.
Well, I'm not saying you get a free pass.
Well, we are. We're saying you should be happy no matter what.
No, we're saying, do you want to be happy no matter what?
Okay, fair.
Right? And happy in this case doesn't necessarily, it doesn't mean that there's no regret. It, you know, I mean, in Buddhism, we talk about, you know, there's wholesome regret and unwholesome regret, right? There's regret as in, I'm never going to do that again and I'm going to make amends, right? You know, you can keep your heart open and say that was terrible. And, you know, and maybe it was just completely by accident and there was nothing you could do. They ran out in front of your car. Or maybe maybe there's some fault there. And if there's some fault there, then it can be like a commitment to, you know, to not do that again, you know, you know, doing whatever, volunteer, or, you know, being a spokesperson against whatever you did or whatever. There's things you can do, but is going to, you know, is being unhappy a requirement?
Yeah, so I'm not arguing with any of that, and it makes sense to me. It's the experience of this unpacking, you know, and that's where it trips me up, because I find it very hard to release that without saying, yeah, but hang on, you haven't paid for your bail yet. You know, you're getting out of jail, but you haven't paid for your bail, and so it's that judgment coming in and saying, no, you don't have a right to just bypass all of this.
Yeah, well, and it's not, you know, if you did something and, you know, you were held criminally liable and tossed in jail, then the question is, could you be happy being tossed in jail? Right? It's not saying you don't have to go to jail. It's saying if you were thrown in jail, could you be happy still?
Right.
Right. So, and happy is really the wrong, you know, again, happy is the wrong word, because, like, you know, for example, you know, your parent dies, your spouse dies. The idea isn't to be happy through that. The idea is to keep your heart open. The idea is to let the emotions go and feel the love that's there in the sadness, in the grief, right?
Right.
So it's not a call to have inappropriate emotional responses to things, but it's a call to, you know, keep your heart open, as in allow yourself to feel whatever comes up, right? And not close to it. So, you know, you may have terrible anguish at having done this terrible thing, right? Feel it. Keep your heart open to it, right? Don't store it. Experience it fully. Okay. So the next chapter, the spiritual path of non-resistance. I love this chapter. I love lots of the chapters, but this one I find really encapsulates the practice quite well. And it really, he focuses a lot in this chapter on will, and the idea that will is this powerful force that we all have, but we often assert it in opposition to life, right? So, he says will is, I'm moving my arm up and down. It's will that's doing that, right? If my arm started flapping up and down on its own, I'd be pretty, I'd be like, what's going on here, right? And yet we automatically use our will so often in resistance to life. And when he says we resist life, now obviously when things happen, they happen, right? The sensory experience comes in, right? Somebody says something, somebody does something. We don't try and stop that because it's already happened. But then it causes a reaction in our thoughts and our emotions, and we resist that reaction, right? And we don't want it, so it passes through our senses, okay, but we don't want it to pass through our hearts and minds because it's uncomfortable. But recognizing that you've already experienced it, you've already experienced it in your senses, and all that you're resisting it in is your heart and your mind. And doing that is just going to result in you storing it. So do you want to do that? Right? So just recognizing that once the moment's over, once the thing's happened, you're not stopping it from happening. You're just stopping it from expressing itself, and you're storing it. So the call is to just accept the situation and not see it as, just see it as something that happens on planet Earth, right? Recognize that we're here for a short time on this planet. This planet is amazing, and we want to enjoy our time here. So and we're pretty insignificant in the scheme of things, right? So we don't really need to resist life. We're much better off if we embrace life and just experience. Every experience is like, every moment is something to be experienced, right? In the context of this brief life on this planet, every moment is, really is a gift, right? Even if it's not what we want, even if it's not pleasant, at least it's not boring, right? At least it's something that is, you're a greater being the more experience you have and the more fully you can experience each moment. So, he says that it's all about no problems, right? Because a problem is an interpretation, right? My espresso's cold. Oh, is that a problem? Or is that just, look at this, my espresso's cold. I really wanted this and now it's cold. Let me experience this. This is interesting. Wow. Huh. The cold espresso experience. There's another one. Another one for how I can fully experience and enjoy. And it's always better to, you're always able, it's always better to be able to fully experience the situation and get to a place of clarity and balance to deal with the outer problem, right? I'm using that word problem again, to deal with the outer situation, right? I mean, you can, because instead of seeing it as a problem, you can see it as a challenge, right? Or you can see it as an opportunity to learn, and just see it as an opportunity to grow, right? Think about somebody who's experienced, loved ones dying, and somebody who hasn't experienced loved ones dying, right? That person who has experienced it, there's a richness to that experience, right? It makes them a greater being because they've been through that, right? Somebody who's experienced, you know, a terrible illness and has gone through that, you know, they grew from that experience, right? It's a valuable experience. It's not a pleasant one, but it's a valuable one. And so to the extent that you can open your heart and fully experience whatever's going on, it makes you a greater person, right? And it makes your life, like it adds to your life, right? So, you know, as opposed to like just defending and hiding against everything and not experiencing things. Nobody wants that, right? So like the admonition here is just like stop resisting life to the best of your ability, right? And so he says, you know, relax, release, lean back. But here he says, in particular, relax your will, right? And in terms of practice, I find this is a really important aspect of practice, is noticing the exertion of will. You know, he talks about it as being, it's like hands inside your mind, right? that are resisting. And he's like, drop that resistance, right? Drop that use of will to resist life. So, you know, you can practice by noticing whenever you're exerting your will in opposition to life. Yeah. And he says it's not about getting into the emotion, right? It's not about, you know, you're not trying to make the emotion be this way or that. It's just about relaxing and allowing it to do its thing, right? And he says you don't need to sit with it, you can move on, right? You don't need to figure it out. You don't need to stay with it until it's, you know, something magical happens. It's just let it do its thing and you know, and move on. And we've talked about this before. I mean, like, you know, sometimes, you know, if I'm in sitting meditation and something comes up, then I often sit with it for a long time. But if I'm in the midst of something and something comes up, generally I'll just, you know, be with it for a short time. You know, depending on the situation. But let go of the idea that you're going to like, that anything in particular is going to happen. You know, it's going to go away. It's going to, like, you know, dissolve in a stream, you know, in a magical display of energy or anything like that. And mostly just that it's going to go away, right, in any particular time frame. So he you know, he basically just says this is what life's about, is not resisting. And if you cannot resist, then you can really see every moment as a gift. Or vice versa. If you can see every moment as a gift, then you're less likely to resist. It's kind of a circular thing. Any questions around this or any thoughts?
Words matter. Telling an addict not to resist is not a good idea.
Yeah, I agree. So, and when he says not resist, he doesn't mean don't resist the pull of the energy.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. So that's a really important distinction. Yeah, it doesn't mean don't resist what your personal mind is telling you to do, or don't resist what your samskaras are telling you what to do. That's not what this means. It means relax in the face of them, because they tell you to defend, right? When an addict uses because they're defending against the underlying discomfort that they're trying to escape from, right? So it's saying don't defend against that underlying discomfort. Don't defend against that, you know, fear or whatever is underneath it. Experience it, and then you know, and you know, experience the urge, experience what's going on there, but don't give into it. And it's interesting when he talks about, you know, he often talks about this in the context of not drinking or not smoking. And, you know, often people will say, oh, you know, I had such strong urges and I struggled and I struggled and I struggled. And it was such a struggle, my practice is going really terribly. And then Mickey will say, what did you use? And they'll say, no. And he'll say, your practice is perfect. Your practice is beautiful. This is what practice looks like. It's not about having no urges. It's about just being with them, staying in the seat of awareness, and not being pulled into their energy, not being sucked into them. So Nikki, that's a really good point. I mean, I've thought about this point, but it's a good one to bring out in this class. That when we talk about not resisting life, we're not talking about the pull of our habit energies, or the pull of our samskaras. We're talking about the thing that the samskaras are trying to not feel. So, okay. Teresa?
You've touched on this a little bit before, but how all of this practice has changed your life. Could you elaborate on that? I think you said that you're happier than you used to be. And
Yeah, I find things don't bother me as much. You know, I mean, I still get upset by this, that, and the other, but a big thing is I don't get upset about getting upset. And I just feel like I have this kind of, you know, superpower to, that, you know, no matter what happens, I have this superpower that I can relax, release, lean back.
yeah.
You know, sometimes I forget that I have it, you know, I mean, the reactions get the better of me sometimes. But these, you know, it's for a much shorter period of time now, if it does. And afterwards, I can let it go so much more easily. I just have a lot more equanimity. And all sorts of small stuff doesn't bother me at all anymore. And also just in terms of, you know, I've been on this sort of spiritual path, if you will, for quite a while, and it's really reinvigorated it in terms of feeling like, you know, I just have this very clear, clear way forward. And it's also this great tool for getting to know myself. You know, like actually like letting myself, like this practice of opening to these reactions is eye-opening. It's just eye-opening. You know, so I mean, I really do feel, even though, you know, I don't really want to experience these reactions, you know, but now when they come up, even though it's a nasty experience, it's like, it's cool, it's interesting. It's like, oh, that was, you know, wow, that was interesting, you know. Like last week when I had, you know, this huge anxiety before class, you know, I was lying there on the floor, writhing and thinking to myself, like, this is so cool. Like, this is terrible, but this is cool, right? I would never have thought that way before. You know, but this lens through which I now look at life means that even the nasty stuff is of value. You know, in a very tangible way.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we just have a couple of minutes. So I just want to go over the homework or home practice for this week. So, I mean, it's always, the focus is on the letting go of the small stuff and letting go of whatever comes up. So the meditation this week is not knowing. And we're going to obviously finish the book for next week. The last 3 chapters are very interesting. And especially I find 17 and 18, but anyway, that's my own personal. If you want, I'm suggesting an exercise. Well, I'll also set a strong intention not to give away your happiness and to notice when your heart closes and asking if it's worth closing. So, you know, I think that's really a very useful practice to kind of add to your toolkit. And then if you want sort of a bonus exercise is to write down a problem you recently faced. And could you see it as anything other than a problem? Like seeing it as a challenge or an opportunity to learn. And how could seeing it as no problem affect your spiritual growth? So that's just a little writing exercise that I think you might find helpful. And I'd love to hear how that goes if you do that. So that's all in the, you know, it's all in the handout for this week, which is in the, you know, in the Google folder. And that's it. So I hope you enjoy this last week of practice while the course is on. And, you know, I encourage you to, you know, to really look at those little situations where your mind just sort of starts going, where your personal mind starts going, and practice letting go in those situations. Practice relax, release, lean back. So thanks everyone for participating tonight.
Thanks,
And if
Laurie.
anyone, yeah, and if
Thanks,
anyone,
Laurie.
if anyone has any questions you want to stay, feel free to do that. I'll hang around.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Laurie, I have a question.
Uh-huh.
Can you do one recording that is a longer meditation?